When we have secant and cosecant, which is what you're doing today, the graph looks like the sine graph and the cosine graph got twisted, okay? You're going to see what happens in a minute. So on your calculators, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So it's important that you key this in right. You key in the y equals screen, you key in 2 over cosine of 0.5x, because when you have a secant, it's a cosine in the basement, right? So we're going to check our window and put negative 720 to 720. We're going to go up by 60 because I skipped that spot. And now go to your y minimum, and it's negative 5 to 5, and it's up by 0.5. Everybody see that? Now you hit second window, and we're going to start at negative 720 and go up by 60. And now you go to your table, okay? Before you go to your table, go ahead and hit the graph key so you see where you're headed. Isn't that pretty? The graph of cosecant and secant are going to look like parabolas facing up and down. They alternate. So when you go to your table, second graph, you're going to see errors in there. You see the errors?
Yeah.
Anytime you see an error, and I see one at negative 540, negative 540 would be right here. You put a dotted line, because that's like an asymptote that graph doesn't go past.
So along the whole thing?
You just put a line. And where's the next one? At negative 180. So that's the one between 240 and 120, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one at 180, and my guess is
540.
540. So your U's, here's the rule. Your U's never touch those dotted lines. They will go on forever up to infinity and beyond and down to hell, but they'll never touch that line. They'll get closer and closer and closer, but they'll never touch it, okay? So let's start graphing. Let's go back up to negative 720 and start graphing this. And it's negative 722. Then negative 660 is the next line, is 2.3. So 2.5 is that one line, so it's a little bit less than that. You guys see it?
Yes.
And then it goes to 4. So on this side of the graph, what you're going to see is half of a U. And then your error. So in between the errors now, you're going to see the full U's. Go ahead and graph those. Let's talk about period and amplitude. The period is the time it takes to do a full squiggly. That's one full U going up and one full U going down. That's a full squiggly, because that would be where it repeats after that. When you guys, if you ever get into upholstery of furniture, they talk about the repeat of the fabric. And the fabric repeats itself every so often because it's the same fabric forever, right? Well, that's the period of the fabric, really. So if you look, your left asymptotes at what, 540? And then it goes to 180. So how many degrees are between negative 540 and 180? Period for secant and cosecant is the same as for cosine and sine. 360 divided by 1/2, and that is 720. That's the time it takes to make 2 U's. But let's look at the amplitude. How far up do those U's go, and how far down do those U's go?
-4.
That's the last point you graphed, but how far up and down does it go?
5 and -5.
These are arrows here, so they go down to negative infinity and infinity. So for every one of the ones you're doing today, There is no amplitude. The only guys that have an amplitude is cosine and sine. Tangent doesn't have it, cotangent doesn't have it, and secant and cosecant don't have amplitudes.
So it's none